and welcome to Avasant's Digital Forum, Future of Retail, Accelerating Digital Transformation. This event is in partnership with Wipro. My name is Andriana Albert, and I will be your MC today. Avasant is thrilled to have partnered with such an innovative organization to bring an hour of thought leadership and expert insights to our audience. Thank you again to Wipro for your partnership. As we aim to make these sessions as interactive as possible, we encourage you to utilize the chat and Q&A features on your dashboard to pose questions to the panelists. They will be answering your questions live throughout the session. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to today's moderator, Fred Pond. Fred is the former CIO of Columbia Sportswear and currently an Avasant Distinguished Fellow. Fred, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Andriana. It's great to be here. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you're sitting in the world as you link into this. We are excited to bring this event and this content to you. I think we've got a great panelist today. I'm going to go through a couple of quick level setting slides to talk about what has happened in retail over, say, the last 18 months, as it's been very dynamic times for the retailers, and the differences between an essential retailer and a non-essential retailer have been dramatically different depending upon grocery store versus, say, high-end luxury goods and things. So it's impacted people differently. So with that, why don't we bring up the first slide? So this comes from, and again, this is kind of a shameless pitch. Avasant, we do a lot of research, and I participate in research around retail and some technologies. They call them radar views, and these are a couple of slides from a radar view that was done in the summer of 2020. So it's about a year old now, but it sets the stage very well for, I think, what we want to talk about today, which is how do we accelerate going forward. So what was found last year was that a couple of key things. Obviously, essential retailers were running fine, non-essential were laying off people, and their businesses were being shut down completely or impacted if they could come up with a socially distant, safe way to do it. The amount of human interaction that was going on in retail had cut in half, like it mentions here, and then internet traffic was up 3 to 4-fold. So everything was pivoting to being buy online, have it delivered to your home, and that stuff. And that's where we were, and it was a major impact. And you can see a couple of the other call outs from this slide. I won't touch on them in detail, but you can see that there were things moving upward in redefining essentials. There were optimizing spend, and people were being careful about their spend. And that's really where we were at that time. Next slide. So from that study and that research we did a year ago, we kind of came up with 5 key drivers. One was to evaluate businesses and decide how you're going to survive and what models are going to work at that time. And again, mostly online and socially distant and those things. Pick up in curbside or those kind of situations. You needed to reimagine your physical stores. Obviously, a lot of them were sheltered, but you needed to find ways to make that store work, even if people couldn't come in it or only if you could come in. You needed to accelerate your digital transformations and get more and more connected with the consumer and the customer online. You needed to devise aggressive investment plans to take advantage of revitalizing your business, keeping it going, and being ready for coming out of the pandemic. And lastly, you needed to forge strategic alliances around differentiated experiences and how you were going to change your business to survive those things. So with that as the background, now we're a year later and things are completely different. Everything has opened back up, although we do have concerns about where it's going to go and are we going to have another miniature shutdown. I think that concerns everybody with the Delta variant going on now. But we are generally, all retailers are back open. Everybody is back in person. Masks are minimized. Maybe now, I guess they're back if you're indoors, but those kind of things. So based on all that, we think it's the perfect time to bring this group of panelists together and talk about where do we go from retail now? No longer are you focused on the things that you were a year ago, survival, doing those things, and just getting through that. Now it's how are you going to grow? How are you going to accelerate that growth? And how are you going to connect with that consumer and have that intimate relationship that makes them a permanent part of your business? So with that, I want to, as the background, I want to open it up and let each of our three panelists introduce themselves. And then we'll come back and start to go through it. So why don't we start with Tony? He's on the left side of the screen, so we'll open it up to Tony.
Thanks, Fred. Happy to be here. Thank you for including me. I'm the CIO for Bumblebee Foods, and many of you know us for our seafood products. We also have other brands like Cloverleaf, Brunswick, Anova, and we are a global seafood company. We are the leading North American shelf-stable seafood company for canned and ready-to-eat products.
All right, from there we'll go to Shirin.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shirin Alipana. I'm a principal with Avasant. And have obviously worked with Tony with Bumblebee Seafoods and also Jack in the Box in quick service restaurant industry. And I'm happy to be here and to share some thoughts around the topics that Fred covered. Thank you.
And lastly, our partner from Wipro, Ravi, or Debbie, sorry.
Thanks, Fred. It's great to be here. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're at. This is Devi. I'm based here out of San Francisco Bay Area. I lead Wipro's business in retail, services, and transportation. Retail and transportation segments are very connected segments. As we go through the discussion, I'm sure there'll be a lot of touch points where both these industries interact with each other. I'm looking forward to having an engaging dialogue with each one of you. Thank you for your participation.
Great. Thanks, all three of you. And I just want to start by throwing out, obviously, COVID has changed the retail industry more than probably any single thing in the history of retail. Maybe the cash register was the first big one. Obviously, COVID has changed everything. So with that in mind, historically, stores and brick and mortar presence was the key part to almost every retailer for decades and decades. That all started to change, 20 some years ago with Amazon. And there was a lot of theories and pushing a few years ago that stores were dead, retail brick and mortar was not going to be a strategic part of the plan, and all that as it went. But now that we're coming out of COVID, we're seeing brick and mortar be a key part of a lot of the stories. It was a key part of survival for a lot of businesses that could do, either drive through or pick up, those kind of things. And even Amazon is opening retail outlets. We have one in a mall here where I live. And so we are actually seeing more presence of even Amazon opening brick and mortar locations. So what I want to throw out as the first question is, what are you guys seeing and what do you think are the key things around how the physical plant and brick and mortar for retailers are being used, are being changed, and are going to be changed in the future? So with that, I'll throw it out to Shirin to start the conversation. Obviously, she has great background with being in the food service business.
Yeah, thank you, Fred. I think the obvious thing is, especially after pandemic, that the need for human interaction has gone away. And that's actually, it's more than ever now because of all the closures we had in the physical stores and the fact that people really had only options to order online, pick it up, and really not have that human interaction. So that's one thing that is still continuing. And the way the physical stores will change in the future to accommodate all the needs for human interaction, personalization, and the conveniences. One is the actual architecture of the building and how it's going to support digital transformation, how it's going to support all the new behaviors from the customers that they are looking for, buying and picking up on the rack, or just driving through and not even touching anything, paymentless option, touchless options, and all of that. So one is around the architecture of these physical locations. Second one is building the trust back in people with providing safety measures and how stores are performing these safety metrics and measures, and how they're going to keep everybody safe at the store, and at the same time provide that personalized experience that customers are looking for at physical store, just like the way they do online shopping experience.
Makes sense. Very good stuff. Rob, you want to add anything to that? Debbie?
Sure. First of all, the concept of a store may have changed. It may have a new avatar, if you may, for those of you guys who are movie fans. If you look at it, the digital transformation or digital revenue increase in the retailers, maybe making the stores effective, in some cases smaller. Let me kind of delve into what I sort of mean by that. If you look at the front of the store, they're becoming smaller, but they're yet wanting to deliver enhanced experience in the front, right? Customers are demanding higher experience and more engagement, but not wanting to pay more. Customers are experimenting with, Shirin, you touched upon it, endless aisles, touchless checkouts, app usage within the store. They're forcing you to sort of use the app within the store for you to sort of navigate through the store. And by 2023, Gartner is predicting actually that we will have at least one store for most of the major retailers will have a one store with a walkout experience, which is absolutely touchless. You buy what you want from the shelves and just walk out. It will automatically check out and pay for you. In the back of the store, it's interesting, right? It's getting bigger to have a bigger play as fulfillment centers. This will help them compete with Amazon's same-day delivery without ramping up the distribution centers. So DC capabilities must play on a smaller and a more economic scale. This sort of leads to what they can do in the back of the store, maybe having more automation, using cobots in addition to robots, right? So I think so. If you're looking at it, stores both on the front of the house as well as the back of the store, the store of the future will be measured on efficiency and convenience, and for that, leveraging of technology is very, very important. So I agree with you completely, Fred, that stores will become very relevant in a different avatar in this new world of market.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think that whole idea of a store being a fulfillment center, possibly, a touchless place, Amazon's got some of those up in our neck of the woods here in the Northwest, where you can walk in and pick out your things and you walk out and it knows who you are and you left and you get a bill. And so those kind of things are being experimented and really are reality. And we're also seeing pop-up stores in some of these cases where a store is there just for a single marketing event or a parking lot thing or something. And again, very focused and then can disappear. So it comes and goes and has much more purpose and like you said, almost an avatar approach to it. I like that. I like that analogy. Tony, how about you on that?
Well, ironically, Debbie talks about the front and the back of the store, but we're center store, right? So we were challenged for a long time. Before COVID, center store was struggling. You've got all your shelf stable items and so forth. So we were in a challenging place as a brand on trying to drive more people center store when all the activity was going around the outside, right? Front of the store, you have delis, you've got fresh, you've got all these things happening. But 18 months ago, that all changed. And I think what happened for us is it reinvigorated our brand and our products, and it forced a lot of rethinking on our side on how we go to market, how we sell our product, and how we, the supply chain impacts that we'll probably get into later was very significant. We have all been through SKU rationalization projects forever, right? And it forces you to challenge some of your biases when you're looking at your products. You can look at the data, but there's always that emotional attachment to a brand or to a flavor or to what have you. But with COVID, it forced that, it accelerated SKU rationalization to look at the high performing, high velocity SKUs when they're, when your supply chain is challenged and so forth. And I'll end with, we want to talk about e-commerce, we'll talk about omni-channel, but how do we get our products to the consumer? In the demographic change we've seen in 18 months, and the anecdote is, how many of our parents would you think would go and use a QR code to pull up a menu 18 months ago, right? So you're seeing all the way from young to old and everything in between become more comfortable with technology and innovation. And that allows us as a brand of shelf-stable products to figure out how to best get our products to the consumer.
Totally agree. And I love the analogy that you said there of our parents using a QR code to bring up a menu or to do other things. You would have never seen that 2 months ago,
Exactly.
18 months ago. So yeah, unbelievable force that it made us think differently and made people learn and progress. So with that said about the stores, obviously a lot of changes there, a lot of investment, I think, in the stores. They're not going away, but they've got to be a part of a fully integrated, and I know it's a terribly overused term, but omni-channel environment where people get a common experience and consumers can feel good about what they're seeing in a common way, whether it's in a store, in a pop-up store, online, on their phone, wherever it is. So I want to throw out the next one is a lot of work has been done in omni-channel. A lot of it was patchwork, I think, in the past. How do we make sure that you can return something, to the store if you bought it online, and the basic things? But where do you think omni-channel and how is this consumer environment going to progress? And how do you stay closer with your consumer in that entire world of brick and mortar, online, phone, digital media, social media, and that stuff? And we'll go back the other way and just start with Tony and see what you've got on this one.
Well, I would argue that omni-channel was nebulous to a lot of people. They didn't understand it. They didn't really grasp it. But now that you've experienced it firsthand, right? You go to a store, you go online, you do click and collect, you do all these different things. Now it starts to resonate, and it breaks down these barriers of what that consistent relationship with your consumer means. And for us, being a branded company that goes through retail or goes through online, it's hard to create that relationship. And so, for the opportunity that we see in front of us when we look at omni-channel on hyperscale, it allows us to look at those opportunities from, how do we rebrand, make the brand consistent across all platforms, but also we've been introduced to new consumers. We brought some of our old consumers back into the category. And so now we've got this plethora of demand. How do we reinvent and provide innovation to a category that traditionally been your stagnant in the past?
Okay, yeah, great. And you're right. You are working with partners and relationships through your delivery channel, and how do you still keep that intimacy, but yet work with the Krogers and the Albertsons Safeways and the Walmarts and everybody of the world, along with a lot of other ones.
You got it.
Okay, Debbie?
So Fred, my perspective on this, omni-channel, you're right, is such a cliched and much used word. I actually thought I'm gonna stop using that word. I tried that, but there's not one customer meeting I do or employee meeting I do or in a panel discussion like this, I can get away with 2 sentences without using the word omni-channel. But frankly speaking, I feel that the only channel customers really care for is a channel of experience. And I think you guys made an interesting point about experience of a brand, frankly, should not change based on the channel, right? If you look at the experience as a channel and make that as a directive internally to the retail organization, the rest of the decisions become easier. And you think all touch points as opposed to 1 or 2 touch points. So it should be pervasive across all the touch points. Look at examples. Look at what Best Buy has done. Best Buy's delivery of experience across their touch points has been very consistent, something that they've seen significant growth during the pandemic. you can debate are they essential retailer or not essential retailer, but despite that, pandemic has given rise to good growth for Best Buy, and the way they gave experience across the channels has been quite impressive. Ulta Beauty is one more example. They've done some great work with respect to delivery of consistent experience. Target, Lowe's, I can name a number of examples where they've driven growth and experience by delivering brand promise, I believe, at every touch point. And I think as coming from the technology world, the imperative for all of us is to sort of build systems that delivers consistent experiences across channels, not just a seamless journey. There's this big thing about reimagination in the seamless journey. How do we do that? In addition to that, delivering a consistent experience. So when we're doing functionality testing and usability testing of application systems, how do we put a focus on consistency of experience across channels? So both the system integrators as well as retail technology houses, they have to make this as a priority to make sure that experience is a channel that they vector the systems on, and not so much omni-channel being a buzzword. That's my honest perspective on this, Fred.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is. It is how you can create that single experience and have people be comfortable and know the brand and be loyal to it, regardless of where they're going, whether it's to a multi-channel retailer, it's through a specific website, it's through, just shopping in a mall and seeing something. It is, you're right. It's how can you do that, and all the different touch points that a consumer is looking to connect with on the brands that they love and support and that stuff. Sharin, how about you?
Sure. Let me throw another buzzword out there. Maybe I look at it more of as an omni-commerce. For me, is journey from finish to the end, no matter what channel you're using, basically cross channels. And what customers are looking for is right now, it's convenience, speed, and the trust in the brand. And no matter if you're a physical stores or you're shopping on your phone, which is one of the big things these days, or online, whatever channel, those are the top three things in the minds of our customers. So how retailers go about that is having about 360 view of each customer, right? Their behavior, shopping experience, the tools they use, and their data that we can collect and apply them across different channels, and create that experience, physical, online, or however other channels that we use. Just imagine if you text something on one of these online websites and somebody responds back, they already know your name, they already know what the things that you've purchased in the last few months, and over the text, they're helping you to resolve that issue. So you don't have to pick up the phone, call somebody, go to the store. Just creating all of that across different shopping channels, across different experience channels. I think that's a big thing.
Yeah, I think that's a great one. And I guess this kind of ties into another one is, as you're doing this, how are people going to measure it and know if they're really effective? So I'd like to kind of throw that out and see if you guys' thoughts on, what are going to be those key things and how it can be measured, because we can do a lot of work in technology people. We love to roll out new solutions and everything, but you got to get back to where is that measurement? Is it, in gross margin? Is it sales? Is it customer sat? Is it some of those things? Where do you see those key measurements that are going to make it supported? Because obviously we've got to justify the investments we're doing. So anybody want to take that one?
I think one of the,
Go ahead, Debbie.
Can jump in, is that okay?
Yes.
Sorry for you. I was just saying that I think one is in terms of, I'll go back to my experience aspect. Experience leads to customer satisfaction and retention. Because the loyalty needs to keep the customer to themselves. So what's the sort of the LTV or on a repeating basis, what's the customer revenue? And there are systems and processes to measure that these days. There's so much of data available to doing that. The second thing that I always look at when I do my internal reviews on the design of applications and systems that we do for customers is ask your customers to look at how much of additional cross and upsell is this system or process change has been able to do. If such a measure is not there in place, request that. And these two measures, one is in terms of experience enhancement of the lifetime of the LTV of the sort of the customers to, and second one is the cross and upsell. These are the two measures that we can start off, and I'm sure my co-panelists will have a number of examples as they're in the trenches facing this one on an everyday basis. So I'd love to hear their perspective as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty transparent. If you win at the shelf, what are your sales? What are your margins? What is your, everybody in retail gets unbelievable data, and we know 4-week, 12-week trends, our competition, and so forth. So, we focus on things that, as Shrink kind of talked about, trust and convenience are very important to us. Also, we believe that in our category, consumers want to do business with a company with a purpose. And we're very focused on sustainability and transparency and providing that level of insights to our consumers to build that trust. Quality is always a high margin, a high bar for us to measure, and providing that repeatable sale that Debbie talks about. So, for us, measurement is at the shelf, and are you winning at the shelf? And we do tons and tons of consumer insights, as well as we've got consumer feedback that we get from all of our, for people that want to provide it. So it's all of the above, but I would tell you, Fred, you mentioned this, that data is the fuel. I talk about data is the corporate currency that drives our business, and all the insights that we try to accumulate and use and drive better decisions is kind of the foundation of what we do as a company.
So is that saying you're diving into a lot of big data initiatives and things, because you talk about consumer insights, a lot of things that you've touched on here can create very large data sets and very large different sources of information that you're attempting to get those insights from?
I will tell you, 18 months ago, sent a shockwave through our company on a number of different levels. And one of them is our organization and our skills and the way that we are aligned internally and how we are structured, to be honest with you. And we've restructured our brand group, and we've added new skills. And I've personally taken people out of IT and embedded them into the brand company, into our brand business, to sit in their staff meetings, understand the IRI or Nielsen data, understand the conversations that a brand and a sales and a trade person have, so that we can absorb that to provide better insights and analytics. We've all done enterprise reporting projects, and we've done 1 million of them, that some successful and some a lot not so successful. And, it was always, as we look at information in a company, I reflect on, we would go to the business and say, what do you want from a report, or what do you want in a dashboard? Well, I don't know, I want those cool dials and colors and things that change, but it wasn't really substantive, right?
Right.
And so what we did in one exercise is we would sit down with the leadership and ask one question: what do you do in the first 20 minutes of your day? And an hour and a half later, you traverse through that conversation, and then you start to build insights into what they do for a living, what's important, what are they looking at, what are they sharing, what are they trying, what aspects are you trying to improve in the business? That's how we kind of look at it, and we're doing it different. We're just trying to put people in the position of the business, literally sitting with the business, to absorb it and drive better analytics and insights.
Great information. Yeah, I love the perspective on that. And I agree. It is always, as technologists, we always try to, let's lay out what you want first, and not think about how they think to run their business on a day-to-day business. And the perspective from marketing or sales or from brand development or from product development are all very, very unique. So I love the idea you're putting people in with your business folks, you're teaming up and you're getting there. Shrin, do you have comments around?
No, I would have to agree with Tony and Debbie both. One thing I just want to add on the QSR space, obviously, the average check amount is one of the big factors, right? So when you're actually looking at all of this upsell capabilities, digitization, and all the other offers that we want to put out for the customers, at the end of the day, what's the impact of an average check amount? Is it more of a repeat, or it's like more bigger check amount than what we used to see before? So those are the things that we are being tracked in the QSR space.
Okay, Yeah,
So Fred, can I quickly reflect on the data point that you asked about on the data and insights? I'll make a 30 seconds point if that's okay with you.
sure, absolutely.
Given the fact that we run engagements both on the customer experience front, from a business process outsourcing, and from a technology standpoint, where there's a lot of data plumbing that happens. One of the common questions I heard from customers in the last, I would say, 4 to 6 quarters since the pandemic is early on the days, they were not very clear about what are the customers saying or what are the customers wanting. New pandemic, right? So it's quite interestingly, what we saw a change in terms of demand from our customers is looking at the data that you have, both in terms of the voice of the customer through the customer experience centers, voice as well as non-voice, and through multitudes of data that you're plumbing for us. First of all, what's the raw data? From that data, drill it down to what are your insights? And from those insights, give us those actions. Collaborate with the business and identify those actions. And quite interestingly, we used to publish what we call as the NBAs, the next best actions that you can take. Not to confuse with the NBA, the Basketball Academy, but we used to publish these NBAs. And that was quite a way so it made us relook at the way we look at the data that we used to get, something that, pandemic got the better of us. So I think we took the situation as an opportunity, and now we are leveraging data in different ways to be able to suggest to business what should or should not be done on a go-forward basis. I know I'm kind of talking at a high level without giving specific examples, but I didn't want to sort of hijack this session into a data session, but hear the perspective.
No, that's fine. And I think data is everywhere, and all of us struggling with how we harness it in the right ways to get those things and then make them actionable. You hit on that. How do you take those insights and then make them actionable, where then you can see a result and measure it, and then know I'm going to do more of that lever and I'm going to do less of another one, or I'm going to try a new one because that one didn't really have an impact. So now we've spent a lot of time talking about stores, omni-channel. I love your omni-commerce. I think that's a great new term I'm going to use going forward, because it is about that whole consumer commerce and experience in there. But now I want to pivot, and we would have never thought supply chain problems could be what they are today. And with the shortages and with the challenges, lack of containers, lack of trucking, lack of anything that's out there that's going on, and just how all these retailers and how all these people source back to, whether it's like with Tony, back to a fisherman in Indonesia or back to wherever those things are coming from. So I want to throw out there, where are we going to go with the digital supply chain, and how are things going to evolve both process-wise and technology-wise as we progress to make sure that supply chains can be more responsive, can be smoother, avoid some of the challenges we've had with COVID, obviously, but give the flexibility in the future to allow a retailer to scale or and move things around and have it at the right place at the right time, so the consumer is delighted. So with that as a key in, why don't we start with Shirin on where she sees supply chain challenges, where you think it's all going to go?
Sure. Obviously, with pandemic, one thing that became apparent was the diversity of suppliers, right? So when manufacturers in China closed down due to the coronavirus, a lot of businesses, they were struggling to find out where to source the materials, right? They source the raw materials or whatever else that are required. So diversifying the supplier, that's one of the things that we need to focus on in coming years. The other thing is having real-time visibility to the entire supply chain process end to end, and that comes with a lot of new digitization opportunities, such as using IoTs and sensors across the shipment, getting a visibility to tracking their schedule, and how we can put in artificial intelligence in to predict some of these even like natural forecasts, right? Something happens, there's a flooding at some point, and there's a truck that's delayed. So how we can do some predictive analytics to mitigate for those situations, and then how agile our supply chain team can be, knowing all of this, having all the predictions, having real-time visibility of that, and then correcting courses as they go through the supply chain issues and situations along the way.
Debbie, how about you?
I'll make 3 short points, Fred. This is one of areas we have seen significant uptick in the demand through I think one of the 2 topics. One is how do we modernize the IT environments to enable to work from home more? And second one was the diversification of supply chain. Those are the 2 broad topics that picked up quite a bit through the pandemic. So 3 areas. Number 1 is customers across the board, mostly in the essential retailer side, have had to reauthor, redesign, and in some cases reorchestrate their applications infrastructure to be able to offer same-day delivery, in some cases 2 hours to 4 hours sort of a delivery, right? And it had to be done frantically to be able to enable that. So that is one big change. And I think now that pandemic has been there for a longer period of time, and this is an expectation for the customers, how can at a foundational level, it can lead to more last mile efficiency, if you may. That's point number 1. Second one is how supply chain can be looked at based on the segment within the retail industry. There are proof points that we've created to be able to how an apparel and fashion retailer needs to look at supply chain, and how an off-price retailer needs to look at supply chain in this new world, and how an electronics major versus how an essential retailer / home improvement. There are differing points of view about it, and I think it's important to have imperatives both for systems design as well as for process changes that one has to go through. So sort of like have playbooks of sorts. That's a second point that I want to make. The third one is automation. I think, Shirin, you hit up on a great point about customers have opened up to release their budgets to automate, whether it's warehousing or digitalization or digital twins has been one such area where people are looking at experimenting with. So I think there is more appetite for automation in the supply chain arena, which was not there before, given the velocity that's expected out of this. That's my quick perspective, Fred.
Great. Yeah, I agree on that stuff. Tony, how about you?
Was there a disruption in the supply chain we haven't noticed? I will tell you that the biggest thing this has provided is it exposed all your weaknesses. Mm-hmm. It identified, what you're good at and what you're not good at. And Shirin hit on a lot of good points as well as Debbie, that, when we look at it, it was all about communication, alignment, and integration. And integration, I wouldn't say is so much technology as much as, partnerships with your suppliers and your supply chain and your retailers. It forced stronger collaboration, communication. And then what it helped identify is where does it break down? Work through technology and innovation and skills, to be honest with you. We've identified a bunch of areas where we need to improve. And it's not just getting the latest software. It is, looking at, your business processes were exposed. The way that you went to market was exposed. And I say that saying, we did some things really good and some things we didn't do good. And so it just accentuated, the highlight that it forced you to reevaluate every aspect of what you do. And we're a global company that we're impacted by all the containers and the fish. And as I mentioned, the whole SKU rationalization. We've had a SKU rationalization project for a decade, but it's hard to make those decisions. But when you're forced to, it's really easy. When you only have so much supply coming in and you've got to make hard decisions. And I think, Debbie, you hit on a lot of good points when you talk about data and forecasting and, the demand of the consumer. If you figure it out, let me know, because we are struggling to figure out you know, historically, we don't even look at 2020, right? I think a lot of companies are looking at 2019 trends, comparing it to 2021 and 2022, but even that is skewed. And so all those things have changed the way that we run our business dramatically, whether it's from the supply chain to demand planning to, you know, omni-commerce, which I love. It's been a revitalization for our company to challenge ourselves in areas that we weren't, you know, necessarily strong enough to challenge before, because those were hard decisions to take on, for sure.
Great. And with that, I think I want to kind of open it up. I know there's a bunch of questions that have been flowing in. So Andriana, do you want me to go through them, or are you going to do them?
I can go ahead and read them. Okay, the first one up is, could you comment on how customer service has been challenged in retail D2C given the surge in online behavior, the shock contact centers have faced with increased workforce restrictions and migration to work from home? What's the approach going forward to mitigate these shocks to the service envelope for a retailer?
Anybody want to latch on? I'll just chime in from it's provided us a plethora of additional information. You know, the volume that we saw, and good and bad, you know, I think it highlighted areas where, you know, from a brand perspective, all the things that you would think, you know, accessibility, availability, quality, all those kind of things. But you'd be amazed at how many people took the time out to respond and compliment the brand, to be able to be on the shelf, to be able to service in a pandemic. I think when you look at the customer service aspects of it, at least that's what, you know, we experienced you know, during these 18 months.
What we have seen, is that there's many customers have asked us to add additional queues for handling additional search, both on the voice as well as the non-voice side. When I say non-voice, I'm talking about the app, the web, the chat support, etc., and the email, right? Now, in both the things, there are two important dimensions. One is empathy from the brand to the customer. How do we just not look at the specific transaction, but how do we, you know, make it a holistic experience and have empathy at the core of it, right? And I think as we are driving that, it's given rise to a change in terms of how they look at customer experience. So I think that's a good thing for the longer term of what does customer experience mean, with empathy being at the core of the center as opposed to just the transaction. That's point number one. Second one is, from the customers to the provider, there is a greater understanding, you know, where the, you know, it's a little anecdote, where the call center agent will say, hey, you know, I'm taking a call from home, so there'll be background noises of kids crying or whichever else. There's a greater understanding of for the consumer also, and it's giving rise to a very humane interaction between the brand and the customer. So, you know, pandemic is not bad in all ways, and it's given rise to a nice humane aspect of the way we look at business. And I think going forward, in my belief, the demand for the data leading to insight to leading to actions, the next best action, I think will become a very here and now sort of expectation, because the customer experience managers in the customer organizations, in the retail organizations, want that on an everyday basis so that they can change the directives for their teams.
Hey, next question.
Next question. How fast can retail adjust to accepting cryptocurrencies?
Ooh, $1 million question.
Thought I would throw that in there.
Anybody want to touch that one?
I got nothing.
Well, I hope fast enough.
Okay, next question. The past year
I have a comment on that one. I'll say, I think crypto, people are going to watch it. I think you've seen Elon Musk say, I'm going to take it for cars. Then he undid it. Now he's saying, I go back. I think everybody is watching it. No one wants to go too far in because of the volatility and which one or how many. I mean, there's about 50 of them out there now. So I think that is the challenge that we all have in crypto is, how far do you go and how do you turn it in? Because your suppliers aren't going to get paid in crypto, at least at this point. So, until that you could get to really some of those things and there's more finality around those products, I think there's going to be a lot of hesitancy.
We haven't seen demand coming the way of using cryptocurrencies as a necessary currency that we need to support across the channels that we support. And I'm wondering when will be the size of a product will be $50,000 or $60,000 so that one Bitcoin can be used. I don't know what's the value of a Bitcoin right now. But we have not seen demand in that space. We have seen usage of blockchain for other areas, but not so much for cryptocurrencies.
Okay, next one.
All right. The in-store experience is nice to have as an option, but I see a lack of Apple or Google Pay in some places, and incentives like coupons are still paper in some places like CVS. Do you see in-person on-site shopping quickly changing to adapt with technology? And what technology do you see having the biggest impact?
Okay,
I think the usage of app within the store for the in-person shopping is a very cool concept, something that as they are training their workforce associates within the stores, when it's not complete yet, they're depending on the consumer to self-assist themselves within the store, and the usage of app within that is something that I've seen as a great example. And I'm still looking forward to walkout models like what Amazon has done. Many retailers are experimenting with that. And I think that'll be one such example, and endless aisles is one such example. So there are 2 or 3 topics that we are tracking very closely and conducting, if for lack of a better word, value case examples or POCs with customers on these 2 or 3 topics.
Anybody else want to comment on that?
Yeah, we're doing in-store promotions via QR codes and couponing and that kind of stuff. I think you'll start to see, everybody embrace the technology of the omni-channel, right? And that people, the brick and mortars are not going away. I don't see them ever going away. But the experience in them has dramatically changed for sure.
And again, just to add to what both Debbie and Tony mentioned, I think use of the app is what's going to drive a lot of that in a lot of work through push notifications. Like, for example, I experienced that personally in CVS. When you're using the app, there's a push notification come to you with coupons that you can actually load into your app, so you don't have to carry around the paper coupons. So that's going to be one of the big drivers, really using the app and all the intelligence that we build behind that app.
Yeah, I agree. I think the app is going to take over, and the idea of printed materials and printed coupons, those are going to die away over time as everybody gets their apps to be more fully featured, and you just get the checkout counter, swipe your phone, and boom, it knows the 7 or 8 whatever they are coupons you have, and they're going to give those special discounts and things.
Right.
So I want to pivot. We've got a few more minutes. One more big topic that I want to call out, and that is really cybersecurity, trust for the consumer. Obviously in the last, it never ends, but in the last 6 to 9 months, the amount of cyber issues that have cropped up that have been debilitating to things like pipelines and a lot of other core things that are going on is a big deal. And consumers are very conscious of that stuff. And retailers obviously want to protect. The last thing they want is another, the famous Target from years ago, and those things to reoccur. So where do you see cybersecurity and consumer tenants and gathering their information? The more information we have on them, the more intimate we can be, but the more we have at risk of losing it in a breach. So comments on cyber.
Yeah, I'll go first. Couple things. I always say that IT used to be fun until cybersecurity came along, and it is every waking moment. We spend an inordinate amount of time. We meet constantly and refresh our technology stack uh, more than I want to admit. But I will go back to something that Trent brought up. It's forced us to look at the diversity of our supply chain, and that we recognize that there's too much dependency on too many on limited vendors will create that challenge. And it's pretty widely known, if you pull up any news articles of the people that have been hit with ransomware and cyber attacks, and one of them was one of our major distributors, distribution centers in the Southeast. And so it forces you to make sure that it's not only us from an IT perspective and hardening our firewalls, but now you got to worry about your suppliers and your vendors and your partners, and what is that connection? What is that relationship? How diverse it is. So it's taken a life of its own for sure.
Fred, great question. I think this is one area that gets attention only when there's a compromise or a massive cyber stealing. I think it should get a lot more attention. Last time when I attended NRF in the good old days when we used to travel in New York, there were 3 or 4 very interesting conversations on cyber. I think businesses carry huge responsibility to establish and nurture trust with their customers, both in the digital realm as well as in the brick and mortar realm of their of the storefronts. Customers need to feel safe and secure just as much as the digital experience. Unfortunately, we read of data breach in the media on a regular basis, and some of these are established brands are at the receiving end. I think there's a lot of development that has happened in the form of regulations such as GDPR and CCPA. While, as you rightly said, Fred, the digital experience relies on building a richer profile of a customer or a consumer by harvesting and analysis of consumer behavior. So what's the sort of balance they strike between GDPR, CCPA, and how can they harvest is important. I think I'll just summarize it by saying that cybersecurity has evolved to prioritize privacy as an important area, while the classic goals were availability of systems and confidentiality. So it's made a pivot into the privacy, and I think there's great awareness from that standpoint. And I think we'll see a number of programs being launched in the cybersecurity space.
Right, and there are some programs, I mean, to your point, Devi, on GDPR, CCPA area that companies can help use to assess where they are at, right, with protecting private information for the consumers, and if there are any gaps, how they can correct them before, obviously, any other data breaches happen.
Yeah, and I think another comment kind of is as cloud technologies continue to grow and more things are there, the infrastructure around a lot of those is getting better at helping you solve some of the problems you had that when you were running your own environments and things, because there's so much more automation to how things are updated and how things are rolled out and that stuff. So I think it helps somewhat to be in the cloud, although it also brings a new set of risks in how you manage that. And I think Tony touched on it a lot, that entire, how do your partnerships and how do your, whether you're a retailer and selling to retailers or you're going back to your supply chain, if they get damaged and shut down, are you going to be without product? And that's a real risk in how you measure that. So I think the whole risk assessment, I mean, Tony touched on it. It used to be a lot of fun. I'm glad I'm not in the day-to-day. And I know most companies have gone from having a security guy to pretty significant teams. So,
and Fred, also technology standpoint, there is a lot of work happening in the context of threat detection and management. Usage of tools has gone beyond the realm of identity and access management into the world of threat detection and management and leveraging of data and machine learning principles towards that. So how do you detect a threat before it happens? And once you get a threat, once you detect a threat, what do you do to triage the systems out and quote unquote sanitize them? So a lot of this work happens behind the screens, something that consumers like you and I do not see, and hopefully we never see that, right? And so we are seeing a lot of demand for threat detection and management, and how this is to be done proactively. And the usage of tools for this has gone to the realm of startup organizations and just not look at the big security houses.
Right. I think AI and machine learning are playing a major role in where those tools and those things are going to go. And hopefully those are going to start to give us a chance, because the bad guys have always been much better funded than the rest of us. So yeah, I don't know, Tony, if you're starting to adopt any of those automation tools and things, AI-based solutions or not.
Oh, absolutely. And it's all about layers, right? You got multiple layers and I hate to say it's not if, it's when, and then you try to, limit the exposure. And so we've taken on obviously like everybody else, a multi-tiered faceted approach, and we're actually thinking about adding another tier. So 3-tier, 4-tier, 5-tier, whatever you think, and back up to your backup on your backup. And so, whatever we can do to protect our company in the case we do get exposed, how can we have the company up and running as quick as possible, is what is all of our focus for sure.
Okay. At this point, I don't know any other comments or around where we are. I know we're about to run out of time. I'm not sure if there's any other question we want to take. We've got about 1 minute left. Andriana?
If we could do a lightning round of key takeaways from today's conversation, that would be great. Lightning round, so maybe 30 seconds each.
Okay, yeah. Start with you, Shrin. What's your lightning round?
Sure. I think it's for me, it's creating, again, I'll go back to my buzzwords of the omni-commerce, creating the same customer journey, customer experience across different channels, while obviously protecting, keeping customer data safe.
Tony, how about you?
Life has changed personally and professionally. And I think all of that is to be taken into consideration when you look at business models and go to market. The lifestyles and approach, everything has changed in the 18 months, and it's not going to go back to normal. And so we need to adapt to the future approach.
Mm-hmm.
Debbie?
Pandemic has accelerated innovation and digitalization. So we can call pandemic as the new Chief Digital Innovation Officer, although that's not a good way to put it. I think it's accelerated digital innovation like we have never seen before.
I agree with all three of summarizations, and I think it's a great time to be in retail, and I think the next 5 years are going to be fascinating for all of us.
Thank you to everyone. Thank you to our speakers, our participants, and a special thank you to Wipro for partnering with us. A replay of today's session will be available on our events page shortly. We will also be sharing some complimentary research for joining us today, so we hope you enjoy that. And thank you again for joining us, and we hope to see you again at another Digital Forum soon. Cheers, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.